Lexington. Ray, you got a couple of things here. The new nationwide crime wave. Do you want to start off with that, or do you want to start off with DARE? Or
I want to talk about DARE, drug resistance education. Do you remember that program?
I do, and I'm not going to break up your flow here, but it's just ironic that I had a conversation with a guy from the FAA. He's a Federal Aviation Administration designated pilot examiner. He's a guy that comes in and signs off pilots. And he told me that his first experience with a police officer was the DARE program in Lexington. He went to school here for a short time. And he asked me if I knew Steve Vivquin, who was at that time his DARE officer. And he went on to tell me that that's the reason that he became a police officer, was from being in one of those first DARE programs here in Lexington as a kid. And then he went on to become a police officer and then become a pilot. And now he works for the FAA. But he just went on and on about the impact that DARE had on his life.
Well, let me, because a lot of people may not know what we're talking about that are listening. And DARE is a program that began in Los Angeles, California in 1985. I took office in 1985, and I read about this DARE program, and I knew we needed to do some kind of a program. And so Greg Howard and Jim Kamara from the school system, Greg Howard was a police officer, and I sent them out to Los Angeles to go through a 2-week course about drug resistance education, DARE. And they came back, and then we went over and practically had to beg the school system to let us try a pilot program in 5 elementary schools where you put a police officer in the classroom, and there's a curriculum that you follow. And so we did that, and pretty soon all of the other schools in Lexington, elementary schools, wanted to participate in the program. And they did, and then pretty soon it was, by the end of a couple of years, it was in 177 school districts in Kentucky, which was practically the whole state. Then somebody at the University of Kentucky did a study that said it really is a longitudinal study. That means long study. Says it really isn't effective in keeping kids off drugs. And so as a result, it became a little in disfavor. And they talked to me about it, and I said it has nothing to do with that. What it has to do with is relationships, contacts between the police department and the public. And if you think about it, because most of the kids, most of the 4th or 5th graders, whichever class it was, had that DARE officer, and they loved their DARE officer because he come in uniform and was a nice guy, as opposed to what they'd heard about police. And so they just end up loving him, and they go home, and guess what? If the elementary kid loves the police officer, so do the parents, and so do the grandparents, and so does any number of people that are influenced by this kid's attitude about the police officer. It all has to do with relationships and attitudes about police, just like the guy that you talked to. Mm-hmm. And so why am I bringing this up? Well, I'm bringing it up because the new police chief, Mark Barnard, texted me, and he says, I'm going to start your DARE program in a couple of elementary schools, primarily in, I think it's Booker T, over in the Georgetown Street neighborhood, and something Wells, okay, which is over off Race Street, which is a good idea. And they're going to put the police officer back in the classroom. Now there are all kind of things you can talk about, avoiding gangs, because gangs start to be recruited in middle school and that sort of thing. and drugs and behavior and that sort of thing. And the idea is that police are not somebody to be scared of. Police are people who are 99.9% are in the business of helping you out. And so that's a good thing, and I think it's a smart thing by our new police chief, Mark Barner.
Well, attitudes have certainly changed. When you worked with the DARE program back in the 1980s, did you ever imagine that we'd be in a situation where, at a federal level, they would basically ignore enforcing drug laws for things like marijuana, would cut budgets for prosecutors that are involved in narcotics prosecution and activity, would sort of smirk and wink at the whole smoking pot thing, and even allow the states, because there was a time that you always had a couple of states that tried to pass laws to legalize marijuana, but the federal government said, if you do that, we're going to prosecute you federally. You can't do that. It's against federal law. But now that law's still there. The law that was enacted by Congress, but it's just ignored. So however you feel about it, it's just amazing how things can just flip. How things can it just seems like in a matter of years.
Well,
drug resistance is not cool anymore.
Well, that's right. And furthermore, it's a matter of the whole thing. I really was offended by Richard Clayton at the University of Kentucky is the guy that did the study, and the whole DARE program is focused on education about drugs. You hope that people, once they learn the downside of drug use, would not use it. And the whole point. Think about this: are we going to quit investigating and trying to prevent murders simply because people continue to murder? No. Same thing with burglary, same thing with anything. We just got to keep on keeping on.
Did have a judge say that one time on a suppression hearing after the hearing was over, and she ruled in my favor. It was on a traffic stop, and they were trying to suppress it, and she had no choice really but to follow the law and rule in the favor. And when it was all over, she was coming off the bench, and she couldn't help it. She says, shaking her head, drugs, people have been doing drugs since the beginning of time. That's what the comment she made to me, almost acting in disfavor of the ruling she just had to make. And I said, Judge, people have been murdering since Cain and Abel, but we still go after murderers. And she just shook me off, But it's the point you just made. Just because you have, but the reality of it is, the majority of people are not. The majority of our kids are not involved in illegal drugs.
That's right.
It's still a very small minority. There may be more people there's going to be more people, more of our kids involved in drug use now with the attitudes that we're developing here. But still, the vast majority of people, they don't want any part of that. Parents don't want any part of it. Most kids don't want to take drugs. And the purpose of programs like DARE is to get to let the kids know that, hey, we support you. It's not just that, because it's like my daughter told me. She said, no one ever approached her at school. She went to Hayes. She went to Henry Clay, just graduated from Henry Clay, and she said, no one ever approached me. Have to hide it, and they can't be out there recruiting. I mean, that's the whole purpose of it. But
it's good for Greg. I mean, good for Mark, Chief Barner.
It is. It's awesome that because it does take a little courage these days, to stand up and say, what, because being an anti-drug is almost old school. You're
most
just
effective,
a traditional thinker. It's like, well, yeah.
The most effective anti-drug program was Nancy Reagan.
Just say no.
Just say no. We got a new.
They mocked that on Saturday Night Live, but it's from that was my era. So.
Well, we got a new group of interns in the office, and two of them are with us this morning. One is Rachel Broughton. Rachel, grab onto that microphone a minute. Now, where are you from?
I'm from Mount Washington, Kentucky.
And so what in the world are you doing in this internship?
Well, I am going to be a senior at the University of Kentucky in the fall, and I plan to go to law school, so I thought this would be a great learning experience.
Well, are you having any fun doing this?
I'm having a ton of fun and learning a lot.
Okay, and we also have with us Lydia Blues. And Lydia is going to be a high school student Where are you going to be going to school, Lydia?
Henry Clay High School.
Big school.
You freshman? Your first year?
Yes, incoming freshman.
Get closer to the microphone there. Yep. Okay. So what have you been doing since you've been here?
I've been watching some of the trials at the courthouse and seeing what happens down there.
Well, they're a great addition to the office, and we're involved in a lot of social media stuff, and Rachel is helping us with that. And when we get back, I'm going to ask her to watch Allison put this up on our website and Facebook and that sort of thing.
So looking at these watching these trials, has it made a difference in as you develop your attitude on how things are? Have you learned anything new?
Yeah, I've learned a lot of new things. Like, I didn't know that whenever the prosecutors or the defendants go up to talk to the judge, they make this static noise so that no one else can hear it. Because on the
white
TV
noise.
shows, they never do that.
Yeah, this is true.
What about you, Rachel?
I would say that because that's all the good stuff is what they privately talk about. And then also just how, I guess how the two sides, the defense and the prosecuting side, really get along. I was thinking it was going to be like a huge,
Fist fight.
argument. Yeah, fist fight basically between the defense and the prosecutors. But no, they really seem to work well together and get along.
Well, everybody represents their side pretty seriously. But come on, at the end of the day, yeah.
So do you get along with every defense attorney, Ray Larson?
No,
I'm going to have you call
I
names,
don't.
but you do not.
I
What would
don't.
make you not respect or like a defense attorney? Just because they're a defense attorney?
No,
Okay.
no.
That's not it.
If I think a defense attorney plays dirty, then or doesn't tell me the truth, then I put them over on this list. And there are not many of them, but over the years, over the 2,000 years I've been doing this, there've been a couple, and I don't like it.
They just at all costs, without because there are certain ethics involved in what you guys do.
Well, the ethical rules for prosecutors is to seek justice. That's it, seek justice. The ethical rules for criminal defense attorneys is to represent your client. Now, do you see a difference in that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's...
If they were seeking justice for their clients, more than half would have to plead guilty. Like 99% of them will have to if they were seeking quote-unquote justice. But in representing a client, it's, get them off, I guess. Right?
Well, that's right. And that's the name of the tune. And sometimes we try cases that we know are going to be close.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we tried a case yesterday, the last 2 days, a vehicular case, and the question was cause of death in a vehicular thing. And we could not prove that the crash was the proximate cause of this person's death. And the judge directed a verdict. And so, but that's what happens in these things. When I was...
But you as a prosecutor have to believe
Oh, sure.
that was the cause of the death.
Sure.
Yeah, for you, that's the difference. I mean, you have to believe, or it's not justice. If you don't believe the evidence is there, and not just the evidence, you don't believe the person did it.
The important part of this is the jury, 12 people, have to agree beyond a reasonable doubt that that all the elements of a crime have been met before they will convict. And juries, I like juries, and they make the right decision most of the time. Sometimes not for the right reasons, but they make the right decisions most of the time.
We'll see you next week on In Touch.